Hi, everybody. So glad to have you with us today because I have one of my favorite product people here. Her name is Nesrine Changuel, and she has been, honestly, a little bit of an inspiration, a little bit of a lighthouse for me for many reasons. One, because she's a woman in product, obviously. Two, she's so successful, having built product at some of the major names that you've heard of, Google, Spotify. She even worked on Skype, and when we first met, had this amazing conversation about how impactful Skype was in my life as someone who is in a long distance relationship abroad with somebody, and how much that product meant to me at that time. So I know from a very early time, she was very connected to this idea of product delight. And as someone who is an optimist, and I like to think of myself as someone who relishes delight, I think this book that she's making and coming out with in September is so fantastic. I can't wait for you all to read it, and I can't wait for this interview today to share with you some of her insights coming from the book. Thank you so much for joining us. Really happy to have you here.
Hi, Shannon. Pleased to be with you.
First question for you, Nesrine. I'm really keen to understand what inspired you to create a framework around delight.
Sure. So here's the big story. We all agree, and I truly believe in that. We all agree that we should delight our users, right? The truth is that we don't necessarily all know how to do that, and very few people know how to delight their users. So in my case, I spent most of my product career building products that delight and that connect emotionally with users. And I feel like there's a need to demystify the concept of delight. That's how comes the idea to create, of course, this concept and create the framework, and then become even bigger. I'm writing the book that is called Product Delight. And the idea is, of course, to move away from the buzzword. I don't want delight to be just a buzzword where all PMs are talking about delighting their users, but become actionable. So what is delight for me? For me, delight is about creating tech products that connect with users on the emotional level. So it's about moving beyond creating functional features and create emotion as well, and serve and address emotional needs for all our users. So that's the concept, and that's the reason why it's becoming my favorite topic.
And it's one of my favorite topics as well. I am someone who really enjoys talking about what makes people truly happy. So this interview for me is just going to be such a joy on top of everything else. Okay, second question for you. I know that you have a book coming out, which I have read and can vouch for as being super, super impactful on the way that I think about delight. It has three main pillars in it. I would love for you to walk us through anticipation, elevation, and connection.
Yes, sure. So the book is, of course, it's called Product Delight, but what I love, and I enjoyed writing the book because it's a storybook. I'm even giving it a subtitle called Product Stories, and not only product stories from my own, but also product stories from many other leaders. Like I get chance to interview people from Dyson, from GitHub, from Atlassian, from many other industries as well. So in order to cover different industry and different domains. So within the book, we will find, of course, the meaning and the definition of delight, but also a lot of case studies, a lot of tools and framework that could be applicable in all cases. Now, when we talk about delight, I usually describe delight and there are three pillars. The very first pillar is about addressing pain point, because users sometimes come to a product because they are trying to solve a problem or to eliminate some frustration. So if the product managed to do that, it will definitely delight the users, right? Let's take an example. Let's take Chrome Password Manager, for example. It's a feature that I get a chance to work on with my Chrome team. I love Password Manager by Chrome. I mean, it's weird to say that I love Chrome Password Manager, but the reason why I love it, because it always comes in a moment of frustration. You're in front of a website asking you for your password. You immediately have that fear. It's like, oh my gosh, I think I have no idea what my password is. And then suddenly you have a pop-up suggesting your password to you. I mean, these are moments that, of course, create trust and create emotional connection between users and the product. So that's the first pillar. The second pillar is what I call anticipating needs, because not all needs are spoken. Not all needs are about solving problems. So great products anticipate these needs. So the best way to give here, or the best example I can share with you, Shannon, is Google Meet background replace. So what people usually don't know is that I joined Google Meet right when pandemic hit Europe, like the exact same period. What a great time to start a new job, and what a great time to start with Google Meet, particularly because, of course, it was a tough time to adjust the scale, etc. But also it was a time where we had to explore and understand the new needs and come up with new features that solve for those needs. And that's how, by the way, we ended up proposing background replace and background blur, because we quickly understood that people are not working from office anymore, and they need to protect their privacies, and they need to have a better feeling while having the meeting. So that's about anticipating need. You don't have to wait for your users to ask you about the feature, otherwise it's too late. And the third pillar, which is also equally important and only few companies master it, which is exceeding expectation. Because if you meet users' expectation, you're having satisfied users. If you're exceeding users' expectation, you're having delighted users. Um, I love always using examples, so I'm going to share with you another example about exceeding expectation. This time, the example comes from Microsoft Edge. It happens that I do a lot of shopping online, and a couple of weeks ago, I was trying to buy a coffee machine. And when I was about to pay, so at the very last step of the purchase process, I've got the pop-up from Edge. It's a feature called Shopping, and it suggests you coupons. I mean, you don't have to do anything. It's just accept coupon. And if it works, at that time I had like 10% discount. It was not expected, but the fact that I was feeling a winner by that feature, it made me feel excited, made me feel happy, surprised as well, and in that case, delighted. So yes, just to summarize, delight, of course, arises from having to remove friction, anticipating users' need, and hopefully going beyond and exceed their expectations.
Right. I love the examples that you gave because they really do cover how, in order for you to provide any level of delight, and it does come from multiple places, you have to meet the requirement first. Because no matter how many, I say this in other places, I'll repeat it here, no matter how many bells and whistles you put on a product, if the core need of the user is not met, it's almost impossible, I think, to reach a level of delight. And then that level of taking it up a notch, thinking about where they would want to go next and how do we anticipate those needs makes total sense. And the connection emotionally to bringing them to a place that they're not expecting, this surprise, oh wow effect, I think is what makes the difference in your framework compared to other frameworks like Kano, which is great. And I'm a huge fan of Kano. But I think that this simplicity of like meet the need, take it to the next level, and find that level of wow that they're really not anticipating is how you make a complete delight, like third level, real happiness happen in the user. Of course, there will always be skeptics. People who think, Shannon, you're a little optimist, aren't you? This is cute, your idea, but it's maybe not critical. It's maybe not going to move the KPIs. I disagree with those people for the record. But I would love to hear from you. How do you respond to those skeptics? And how do you tell them, what do you tell them when they say delight won't move the KPIs?
Let me be honest. So delight might not move KPIs immediately. And that's what most people need to be aware of. But it will absolutely move, or does move, API over time. So that's for sure. That's what I can guarantee. So of course it requires some patience. Why? Because when you create delightful products, you create trust, you create people that feel good while using the product, and you also create like a good perception. Like you will improve the perception of the product toward the users. Now, uh, when it comes to product metrics, actually, I have a good news for you. And I don't know if people are aware about that, but I got to read 4 super large and intensive reports recently. One is by Capgemini, the other is by Deloitte, the other is McKinsey, and the last is Harvard Business Review. So believe me, very, very serious. And the reason why I'm sharing this story is because these giants studied the exact same phenomenon. So over the last couple of years, very recently, by the way, they studied the impact of emotional connection on product adoption. So look, just before even I tell you the results, the fact that these giants studied heavily this phenomenon or this behavior proved by itself that there is a big interest in this topic. Now, since I spent weeks trying to work through this report, I'm going to share with you something that really, really excited me, which is the fact that there's been a consensus over these 5 reports. The consensus is that these 4 studies prove that emotional connection impact revenue, impact retention, and impact referral. So here are the numbers. Emotionally connected users are twice more likely to recommend your product. They are twice more likely to buy your product and services, and twice more likely to stay longer with your product. And here I'm actually comparing emotionally connected users with highly satisfied users. I'm not even comparing with those that are not having their expectation met or need met, etc. So you see there is a big interest here in investing in emotional connection, because over time you can have a huge impact on your business metrics.
It sounds to me like what you learned from this study is that emotional connection is the key to unlocking activation, retention, and potentially even churn prevention.
Yes, absolutely.
Powerful stuff. Okay, how about this question for you? When resources are tight, where should we start? Because we all are busy people with very packed roadmaps, unless you're my team, in which we have a very short list of things that we're focusing on at any given time.
Yes.
But most people, they really struggle to focus on 1 or 2 things at a time. And it can be hard to carve out space for delight. So, where do you think teams with limited time should start?
Unfortunately, there is nothing we can start with before bringing awareness to the team. For me, the very first thing that we need to start with is bringing awareness, talking about the concept, evangelizing it within the company, putting it part of a product pillars or a principle or a value of the company. And by the way, this is some of the big companies I had chance to interview are doing. Like Dropbox are having a value called cupcake, which literally means delight. I mean, they're just playing with the words. At Google, when I was a PM at Google Meet, I was, of course, the PM for delight. So our mission was to delight our users. So talk about that. Make it something more impactful than a buzzword. Try to make it actionable as well. So the first thing I need to say here is that make sure that you talk about the light and making it part of your product strategy or part of your vision or whatever. And by the way, I want to highlight something here that maybe most people are not aware of. Emotional connection is not a new concept. It's something that most designers are familiar with. There have been a couple of books talking about emotional connection and emotional design. There are even trainings about emotional design. For marketers, for example, it's also something that has been discussed for years. I mean, the best ads are those who are like emotional advertisement. However, what I noticed is that for business and product, this is something that unfortunately we're not educated for. I mean, we know how to create impact, we know how to create functional features, but creating emotional products is not necessarily something that has been around for years. And actually, this creates a gap because designers are like talking about emotion, marketers are talking about emotion, and what happened in between is like products like, no, we need to build functional features. So this is why I took this as a mission to make sure that people are talking the same language. And this is also aligned with what I said. Start by evangelizing and bringing awareness. Now, if you want to have something concrete, what can the team start with? I have one piece of advice that is key to start with delight. Start segmenting your users by their motivation. Try to understand what motivates your users and what motivates users on the functional level and what motivates users on the emotional level. Let me give you an example. When I worked at Spotify, some of the functional motivator could be, I want to listen to music. I want to listen to podcasts. I want to search for a track. I want to discover new content. These are functional motivators. And these are some of the reasons why people go to Spotify. However, just think about it now. Sometimes I go to Spotify because I feel lonely. I have no other reason why I go to Spotify except the fact that I feel lonely. I want to feel less lonely. Or I go to Spotify because I feel connected. I want to feel part of a community. You see? So as a PM or anyone working on a product, the very first step is to try to list both functional motivators, which most of PMs are good at doing, but also emotional motivators. And then when you build features, try to map these features to these motivators. Are they solving both, or are they just solving for the functional needs?
That speaks to me so loudly and clearly, especially in the way that we think about product at UserSnap, even because we have our jobs to be done. Like everyone is, I think by now probably familiar with this concept, which really for me ties into a lot of the functional aspect that you're talking about. But it's the emotional side that I think so many PMs miss. And when we're looking at that at UserSnap, we're like, okay, we want to be able to help someone find the problem space, generate the hypothesis, find that solution. Like we know that those are jobs that they need to do. But underneath that, we asked ourselves why. And the real answer to that is like, I want to feel confident in my decision. I don't feel confident. I'm making bets without this confidence. And we see our mission as like helping them get that emotional security blanket, right? And I think this is the way to do products in the future. Like thinking not just about the functions, but the forms, the whys, and the reasons that are driving people to do these things. So you are definitely inspiring me to take a step back and maybe segment that a little bit more and come up with a couple of like different ways of thinking about that. So even just in this interview, and having like read the book and understanding a lot of these concepts already, I'm still getting goodness out of this. So thank you, Nesrine, for that advice. Are there any hidden risks or things that you want to share related to creating delight? Because we talked
Yes.
about where to start. So like maybe there's some do's and don'ts in this discussion we can cover.
Yes, absolutely. So there are a couple of them. I'm actually listing 9 risks related to delight within the book. So I'm going to share with you maybe the top 2 that I want to highlight and people have to have in mind. So when we talk about delight, delight is an emotion. And by the way, I'm going to give you just a small piece of theory here. Uh, for those who don't know, delight is an emotion that combines 2 primary emotions. What I mean is that if you want to feel delighted, you have to experience being joyful and surprised at the same time. Just think for a moment. If you are experiencing joy and surprise, so it's a happy surprise, then you are delighted. So you see, there is a tight connection between delight and emotions, and we want our users to feel positive emotions throughout the journey. Now, when we talk about emotion, there is a risk of inclusiveness. Why? Because what makes me happy is not necessarily what makes you happy, Channel. Even myself, what makes me happy today is not necessarily what will make me happy and surprised next week, you see? So it's really important when we address delight and emotional features to make sure that we are inclusive enough, we are addressing all people's needs, and we're not hurting anyone. And that's the difficulty, by the way, is we want to make sure that nobody's hurt. And I'm going to share examples here because, again, there's nothing better to relate than examples. And the example just happened last year during Mother's Day by Deliveroo. So Deliveroo is this delivery company, very well known. They wanted to be delightful for a moment. So what they did is that during Mother's Day, they did a campaign where they sent a notification on people's phone, and the notification looks exactly like missed call from your mom. So when you open the design is designed in a way it looks like a missed call from your mom, and when you click on it, it says like it's Mother's Day. Think about offering flowers or food or whatever to your mom. Looks delightful. It's a good idea, but now just think for a moment. How is this perceived by everybody, by everyone? Some people don't have the chance to cherish this moment of having missed call from their mom. So how do they feel with this feature? How might they feel with that kind of notification? What is expected to be joyful may turn into something super negative. And by the way, it had a very bad press. They had to apologize. Le Figaro wrote about it. So you see, inclusiveness when it comes to delight and emotion is really key. Otherwise, it may turn really negative. That's the number 1 risk. The second risk is continuity. Why? Because remember what I said, Shannon, there's a surprise in the light. And what surprised me today may not surprise me next week, because there is what we call habituation effect. And it's really important, if we build for the light, that we do that in a continuous way. Let's not do it this week, this year, and then think about adding the light in 2 or 3 years, because otherwise the effect will vanish and people will lose its perception and the brand and the personality of your product. Again, another example just to illustrate continuity within features that delight. I told you earlier that we created background replace. And we first started with a static image as a background replace. And then we added video background replace. You can change your background with videos. And then it was not enough. So we introduced what we call immersive backgrounds, where you can see chimneys and some like snow falling in a very immersive way. And now the last feature that we built within Google Meet was AI generated background. You can have your own personalized background. So the reason why we do that is because we want to entertain and maintain the delight within our users, so that they don't feel like deja vu or something. So continuity is a risk, but also a requirement within delight.
I think this example is such a good one because it forces you to think about the segmentation of your users really intentionally. And when it comes to delight, as you said, it's a personal thing. What delights me may not delight everyone else. So I think it really pushes us as product people to understand our users and understand their potential reactions. And it makes me think of other questions that I want to ask you, but we are unfortunately out of time. And I've gotten so many nuggets in this interview. So I will at some point say thank you so much, Nesrine, for sharing your learning, for sharing your book with us. I will include a pre-order link in Nesrine's page. And of course, you can find templates that she has influenced around delight to help you find out more about your users, understand their drivers, their motivations, their feelings, and make that emotional connection. Thank you so much, Nesrine, for your time today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Shannon. Loved having you.